Welcome to episode 8 of the Solo Sideline. I'm your host, Conor. Reminder to like, rate, subscribe to the pod on any podcast services. It helps me keep the lights on. Listening to this podcast will also improve your overall health. You just have to listen to it while you take a walk or at the gym. Please engage with me on Instagram or Twitter. The handle is the Solo Sideline. I want this podcast to be all sports and no fluff. Some fluff items that didn't make the cut today. The Stanley Cup finals are currently going on. The series is 2-1 Vegas over the Carolina Hurricanes. And by the time you're listening to this, the series could be tied at 2 games apiece or Vegas leading 3-1. Right now, Carolina's up 4-3 with 10.5 minutes left in the third period. Vegas had a 2-goal lead in Game 2 with 10 minutes left, and it looked like Vegas would take a commanding 2-0 series lead. But then Carolina scored 3 goals in just over 5 minutes. Vegas scored with over a minute left and then lost in overtime. Then in Game 3, Vegas had a 4-0 goal lead with all 4 goals coming in the second period. But then the Knights allowed the Hurricanes to tie the game with 4 goals in the third. And the Hurricanes scored 3 times in 39 seconds. Game 3 went into double overtime and Vegas secured the game-winning goal early in the second overtime period. Since I've talked about legal issues in the past, it's only fair I continue. On Friday, news broke that pass rusher Jonathan Cooper of the Broncos was arrested and booked for domestic violence and criminal mischief. This, of course, had fans worried about his future with the team and a possible suspension. More details came out but the argument stemmed from Cooper's girlfriend wanting to see his phone and he was not letting her see it. They wrestled over the phone and eventually he bit her phone. The girlfriend gave a different chain of events, though, of actual domestic violence being involved. We'll see how this plays out. Going over to the WNBA. Last week, Caitlin Clark and head coach Stephanie White of the Indiana Fever were caught on camera in a heated exchange, and this was amid a losing streak. Rumors began circulating by none other than our friend, Skip Bayless, that the Fever had fired their head coach and were looking to hire Iowa's coach Jan Jensen, who happened to coach Clark in college. This went viral and then was debunked. Another instant Skip fell with his quote-unquote ball knowledge. Another person predicted that the Fever would trade Clark to the LA Sparks. This isn't going to happen. People like to write anything about the trending topic of the day or even hour to get engagements and don't care that they're spreading misinformation. The Fever did have a team meeting after this drama, then beat the Atlanta Dream, who are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. And then the Fever lost to the New York Liberty, but then won against the Mystics. So they've ended with a 2-1 record since that meeting. I think we can put the coach being fired or Caitlin Clark being traded to rest. A day after last week's episode of the Solo Sideline, Russell Wilson officially announced his retirement. The timing was weird since it was reported he was nearing a contract to become an analyst with CBS Sports, and then a couple days later announced his retirement. My guess is the contract was agreed upon and signed, and then he officially retired. The question that comes to mind is Russ Hall of Fame worthy? He has 1 Super Bowl win, another appearance, sorry to bring that up, the pass intended of the run, but that did happen. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year, a 10-time Pro Bowler, Rookie of the Year. He led the league in passing touchdowns in 2017 and passer rating in 2015. But after his career fell off. We all know he was traded to Denver and lasted 2 seasons there before being cut and then signed with the Steelers, who made the playoffs but then lost in their first game, then went to the Giants and was benched for Jackson Dart. With all that said, I don't think he's a Hall of Fame player. Only including the Super Bowl era, there's only 4 quarterbacks who have won a single ring and are in the Hall of Fame. That list includes Steve Young, Kurt Warner, Johnny Unitas, and Joe Namath. Now, Steve Young also has won 2 MVPs. Kurt Warner has 2 MVPs. Johnny Unitas has 3 MVPs, and Joe Namath won American Football League MVP, which was before the merger, so It could have been an MVP. I'm going to add a fifth quarterback with only one championship, Aaron Rodgers. He's definitely going to make the Hall of Fame. But he also has 4 MVPs. Russ hasn't won an MVP, and to go one step further, he hasn't actually received a single vote for MVP throughout his whole career. And when you think of the dominant years of the Seahawks and the Super Bowl with Russ, the first thing I think about is the Legion of Boom, and not Russ slinging the ball and being a leader in the passing categories. When he led the league in touchdowns and passer rating, that was after the Super Bowls and the team being less successful. In other NFL news, a contract extension for Baker Mayfield is reportedly not close between him and the Bucs. Baker's current contract has a $33.33 million annual average, which ranks 16th among active quarterbacks. It is extremely team-friendly since the baseline quarterback contract is now $50 million or above. To give a list, Dak is at 60, followed by Burrow, Allen, and Trevor Lawrence. Jordan Love's at 55, then Jared Goff and Brock Purdy at $53 million. Jumping down to the 40s, we have Deshaun Watson, who replaced Baker in Cleveland, and that looks worse and worse each season. Heck, even Daniel Jones makes more than Baker. Baker's probably going to want the $53 million to be his floor since he's better than Purdy, and have 55 be the ceiling. The issue is last year he was inconsistent, and really his whole career has been inconsistent. In the first 8 games, Baker had 13 touchdowns while he threw 2 picks, about 1,800 yards, and then got injured but continued to play. The second half of the season, he had 13 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and 1,800 yards. The glaring numbers, the interceptions increased dramatically, which gave the Bucs pause to commit to Baker long-term at that price that he wants. Baker, for his career, has really just been a warrior. He unfortunately played through injury just like he did last season. He did that with the Browns, and that's why the Browns went and traded for Deshaun Watson. And I just don't think Baker's going to hold up in the future. He's smaller for a quarterback. He's 6'1", but he's going to put his body on the line and leave it all out on the field. He'll play through injury like he has already, but he wants to make sure he's healthy enough to help his team. He has so much competitive fire and spirit in him. Admittedly, I wanted Denver to draft him back in 2018 when Denver had the 5th overall pick. Now we know Baker didn't last that long because he got drafted 1st overall to Cleveland, but he's a baller. I've been a Baker fan since day one. He's going to get paid, but probably after the season plays out. He has proven people wrong before by being a 2-time walk-on player with Texas Tech and Oklahoma, then becoming a Heisman winner and 1st overall draft pick. I've learned not to bet against Baker. The Madden cover athlete was announced this week, and it's going to be Caleb Williams. He's the first Bears player to be on the cover, and the image is his jump pass that happened against the Packers in the wild card round of the playoffs. Honestly, I think this was a miss. I understand we are celebrating an up-and-coming player in the NFL. Sure, I get it. Sure, Caleb has some spectacular throws and comebacks, but in order for a comeback to occur, the team has to be behind, and oftentimes the Bears are trailing due to Caleb being bad. He was the 1st overall pick in the 2024 draft, and that draft class does include Jaden Daniels, who was Rookie of the Year, Drake May, who just went to the Super Bowl in his 2nd year, Bo Nix, who has the most wins from that class, most yards, most touchdowns, and game-winning drives, outplayed the defending MVP Josh Allen to take his team to the AFC Championship game, but that's beside the point. The cover athlete really should have been Jackson Smith-Njigba, Myles Garrett, or Matt Stafford, basically the top 3 award winners with Offensive, Defensive Player of the Year, and the MVP. Little conspiracy theory is if Myles Garrett was actually traded to the Rams a month or 2 ago, he would have been the cover athlete since it wouldn't be him in a Browns uniform. And then he would be on the Rams and it would be him in the Rams uniform. Now, EA could have edited the jersey. We've had that happen in the past. 2K did it with Kyrie Irving, who was on the 2018 cover of NBA 2K, but he was a member of the Cavs at that time. Then he was traded to the Boston Celtics, and there are some copies that were shipped already that have him in the Cavs uniform, but most copies were edited to show the Celtics jersey. And another LeBron rumor has come up in the past few days. Him signing with the Golden State Warriors. LeBron has said multiple times that he would like to play with Steph Curry, and he had the opportunity to do so in the last Summer Olympics when they won gold over France and actually Wemby. LeBron doesn't feel the need to prove anything else at this point in his career and could go out playing on a team that would allow him to have some fun. The Warriors did re-sign their coach, Steve Kerr, and they still have LeBron's good friend and clutch client, Draymond Green. So it's a possibility. Not saying it's going to happen, but it could. There's also a new game that you can play on your phone called 82-0 or 82-0. It isn't an app, but you can Google it, and this is not a paid ad for Google. You spin to select an NBA team and era, and then pick a player to fill out a starting five. The goal is to select players that the system thinks can go undefeated. My best has been 82-0. I did start out, I got 81-1 at one point. You get to spin the era and the team once during the whole game, so you can respin the era. If you get the 90s Bulls, you're definitely going to pick Michael Jordan. But let's say you get the 80s Bulls, you might want to try and respin the era for the 90s. And the team, let's say you spin the Heat in the 2000, or no, sorry, let's say you get the Hornets in the 2020s. You might want to respin that the Hornets in the 2010s. You might want to respin that team to try and get the Heat in the 2010s for LeBron, Wade, or Bosh. It has caught NBA fans and the internet by storm. The Seahawks are also receiving their Super Bowl rings tomorrow, Thursday, June 11th. I know I'll be watching those social media videos and looking at the ring features that Seattle decided to do. I find the rings that open up and show the field and other details really cool. To steal a line from the movie Draft Day, how is the ultimate prize in the most macho sport ever invented is a piece of jewelry? Great question. And breaking news on the NBA front, I have heard that Giannis is going to be traded to the Miami Heat. The Heat will be trading a package of Tyler Hero, Kel'el Ware, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jokic, not the Denver Nuggets center, a different player who happens just to have the same name, plus a couple first-round picks, and then they're going to do some pick swaps. And Kyrie Irving probably going to be heading to the Minnesota Timberwolves. This information came from the X account NBA Trade Rumors. I don't want to steal it and claim it as my own, but very good insider has those information, that trades. And so I think I just spilled some trade news for you. We're going to stay in the NBA here and go to the finals. The finals started the night that the last episode was released. The Knicks were the underdogs in the series, and for the attentive listener, I did say were. The Knicks came into San Antonio and beat the Spurs in Game 1 with a final score of 105-94. In the first half, all Knicks fans had to be in shambles as their team was down, and Brunson had someone fall into his leg and went into the locker room. In that moment, the Knicks season was reduced to two paths. Path 1, their season was over because Brunson would be done for the playoffs. Path 2, Brunson would be back on the bench and in the game shortly. And Path 2 was the result. Brunson came back in the game, rallied the Knicks from a 14-point deficit with his game-high 30 points, and 13 of those came in the fourth quarter. Then, in a must-win Game 2 for the Spurs, the Knicks held a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter and actually trailed, but then the Spurs actually trailed late in that game. It looked like the Spurs stole the momentum and had the home crowd energized and ready to even the series at 1-1. The 14-point comeback was capped with a Wemby bucket and one to put the Spurs up by 2. Jalen Brunson came down the other end, hit a clutch shot to tie the game, and then it fell apart for Wemby and the Spurs. Wemby passed the ball to a teammate instead of taking it up the floor. However, the teammate wasn't, and it bounced off the back, and Jalen Brunson got the steal, and then Wemby fouled him. Brunson only hit one of 2 free throws, though, to put New York up 105-104. There was time left for the Spurs to call an out-of-bounds play and win the game. They got the ball to Wemby, who had a good look, shot over the defender, and it bounced off the back of the rim and out. New York won Game 2 and had a 2-0 lead heading back home. Brunson was the star late in Game 2, but he's had a couple rough games shooting percentage-wise. In Game 1, he shot 12 of 31 from the field, 2 of 9 from deep, but ended with 30 points. In Game 2, he shot 7 of 25 from the field and 2 from 8 from deep, and ended with 20 points. Now, some would say he had a bad Game 2 based on those stats alone, but the Spurs were often doubling him, and that led to open shots for others, as Brunson also had 6 assists. The bigger storyline, I think, is Karl Anthony Towns outplaying Wemby. Cat had 21 points, 13 rebounds, went 8 of 12 from the field, and 3 of 5 from deep. And as I said last week, they started with Wemby guarding Cat, which drew Wemby out to the perimeter, and since Cat can hit the three, Karl Anthony Towns then was able to use his bigger body and push Wemby out of the way on drives to the basket. In Game 2, the Spurs changed how they guarded Towns by switching more and utilizing Luke Cornett a bit more. That didn't work. Cat has been the best Knicks player in the finals so far, which is a little bit surprising. Towns has been the primary defender on Wemby so far, and after taking the crown as best player on the planet from Shea, Wemby's now being outplayed by Towns. The moment that comes to mind is Towns throwing down a two-hand dunk as he gets past Wemby and then screams in celebration and just happens to be right in Wemby's face. The lights may be too bright for the young Spurs. Historically in the NBA, teams and players have had to fail before succeeding. Think about Jordan with the Bulls. Before Pippen was there, Jordan lost in the first round 3 times from 84 to 87, then advanced to the second round, lost in 88, lost back-to-back years in the conference finals in 89 and 90, then finally made the finals and won in 91. But we don't really talk about Jordan losing for some reason. LeBron, on the other hand, never lost in round 1 until 2021. Incredible stat, I would say. Then he lost in round 2, then made the finals and lost to a much better Spurs team in 07. Then he ended up losing to the Big Three Celtics in round 2 in 08, lost to Dwight Howard's Magic team in the conference finals in 09, and in 2012 won the finals, and then rattled off 8 straight finals appearances. The point being, historically, the great players have to experience failure before winning it all, and it looks like Wemby's not the exception to that. Going into this series, the Knicks have the best defensive rating of the playoffs with 102.9. That means their opponents score an average of 102 points per 100 possessions. It is a good benchmark for teams since it removes variables such as minutes played, varied game paces, etc. This is surprising since their star player Jalen Brunson is a smaller guard at 6'2" and isn't the best defender. I think it comes down to Mike Brown being their coach. A couple episodes ago, I went into Mike Brown's background a bit. Being a coach of Cleveland when they made the finals and lost, assistant coach of the Warriors when they were making all their finals runs and winning championships, and most recently coach of the Knicks, who also had De'Aaron Fox, who's now playing for the Spurs. I bring this up because Steph Curry is also a smaller guard at 6'2" and isn't known for being a strong defender, just like Brunson. From 2013 to 2019, the Warriors' defensive rating ranked in the top half of the league, and for 4 of those 6 seasons was actually top 5. And who was a coach during that run, you might ask? Well, the answer is Mike Brown. And that strategy was to have Curry redirect the players, and the Warrior players behind Curry would make up for his defensive deficiencies, and they did. That could be the same tactic that the Knicks are doing with Brunson. Don't let the player drive in a straight line, and one of Bridges, Hart, Towns, or Anunoby will contest the drive/shot. Game 3 was played Monday night, and the Spurs won. At halftime, though, the Knicks had a 7-point lead, but in the second half, San Antonio locked in on defense, swarmed Brunson at half court, making him pass the ball or take a ton of time off the clock to force a contested shot. Game 3 was truly a must-win game for the Spurs, since the series would have been over had they lost, because then they would have to win the remaining 4 games, and no team has ever done that in NBA Finals history. In the first half, Jalen Brunson and Wemby got into a scuffle, really 7 minutes into the game. Wemby ended up shoving Brunson down to the court. The league has now reviewed that call and decided not to retroactively assess Wemby with a flagrant foul. Nothing was called during the game. Now, if the league had given Victor Wembanyama a flagrant foul retroactively, that would have been his third flagrant foul. Meaning if he had received one more during this whole series, any game, any part of the series, he would have been suspended for a game. And I think that play definitely was flagrant worthy. I don't know why the league decided not to. There is a narrative, though, out there that the league is trying to protect Wemby from punishment, and how the NBA's acted so far, including not assessing this as a flagrant. I think that narrative is true. If you recall, Wemby's the same player that elbowed Naz Reid in the throat and wasn't fined or suspended for that incident. Now, he did receive the flagrant 2, and that's why he has 2 flagrant points and was ejected in that game. But not getting a fine or anything like that, suspension, for elbowing a guy in the throat, cocking it up, and then just throwing it, definitely seems suspicious. And I think players such as Draymond, Brunson, who actually was the guy who was pushed down, Luka, and others who have been assessed flagrant fouls for much less should take issue with this. I think game 4, though, is going to be a close game, but I think the Knicks are going to come out and win. Then the Spurs will probably win game 5 at home, and the series will be, at that point, 3-2. The series then will go back to Madison Square Garden for game 6, and I think the Knicks will take that. So I think the ending series will be 4-2. Knicks winning in 6, just like I predicted earlier before the finals had started. And this brings us to the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed your time listening to me talk sports, share my opinions and thoughts with you all. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast services. Find me at Instagram and Twitter at the Solo Sideline. And I hope you tune in next week for the new episode.